Hi, assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for joining today. Today we're going to be covering mastering LinkedIn networking. Before we start off, I would like you guys to tell me a little bit about if you're watching from our last workshop about LinkedIn, were you able to set up your profiles? Just drop a quick yes or no on LinkedIn in the chat below. Did you set up your profiles? And if you had any problems with setting up, what was it? Okay, so let's move on towards the introduction of networking, right? So before we start off with how to do networking, we first have to understand what is networking, right? Um, okay, that's great, Elisa, that you have your setup. Um, so if I talk about what is networking, right? It's not something like you have to go around to different events and like meet random strangers and talk to them. That's the first impression that we have in our mind about networking. Oh, it's going to big events and connecting with big people, but that's a very just a small inaccurate glimpse of what networking is, right? So I think one of the best ways to understand networking is to understand what it's not, right? It's not going to big events with a lot of people. It's not talking to random strangers without a purpose. It's not going around asking people for jobs or opportunities. And it's most certainly not, just a way for you to catch up with others, right? It's more of like you're trying to communicate or add value professionally to the other person who you're talking to, and while simultaneously they're adding value to you as well, right? So if we can move on to the next slide, Timur. The one after this. Okay, so before we start off with deciding how to do the networking and how to create these meaningful, powerful relationships with the people around us, we have to decide what we want out of it. Set a purpose for all of this that you're about to do, because anything that you do without a purpose, you won't be able to do it in the long run, right? You might watch this session and do it maybe for the next few days, maximum for the next few weeks, but it won't affect you in the long run if you don't set a purpose for it right now, right? And there are two things that I want you to consider when you're setting the purpose for your networking. How can others add value to your life, and how you can add value to others' lives, right? So let's start off with the first one, right? How can others add value to your life? What at this point in your life, and this is going to be a subjective answer for each of you, and it doesn't have to be just limited to the options I've listed down. There's a ton of more things that you could be looking for, right? So, for example, a lot of people, when they're at their early start of their career, they're looking for motivation, right? Because the early start is a little bit rough. You don't get a lot of opportunities. It's a bit difficult, and I'm pretty sure since you guys are going through it, you guys can relate as well. By the way, while I'm going through these, you guys can also drop in the comment section if you have any other pointers you want to add. So, for example, if I'm asking the question, how can others add value to your life? And if you already have an answer, then feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll be reading it off from there as well. Going back to the list, so a lot of people are sometimes just purely looking for motivation, right? They know that the work they're doing is exhausting and tiring, and they need the motivation to keep going, right? So they're looking around for support and motivation. Second reason could be that you want to network for, let's say, more knowledge, right? More knowledge in your field, more knowledge about the recent trends, more knowledge about new opportunities, um, and specifically knowledge that you cannot get from books, right? If you wanted book knowledge, you would go buy a book or download a book in today's time and read it. But we're talking about practical knowledge over here, and that's not impossible. The only way you can get that is through people. So you have to be on good terms with people in order for them to give you advice and practical advice, right? And that only happens when you learn to create good conversations. Now that leads me to my third point. Are you looking for valuable conversations? Because that is the essence of, I would say, networking, valuable conversations, right? And that is only possible for you to have if you're a curious person. So I'd say ye cheez decide kar lo, okay, I'm going to try and listen more to people than I am going to try and talk to them, right? Because that shows that you're genuinely interested in that person. And once you're focused on listening to them, you'll actually be asking better questions. And trust me, anyone who's, done a lot in their life, they're going to appreciate you a lot if you're asking the right questions because they know that you're focused in that conversation and you're making it valuable for them as well, right? So it's very important that you start practicing having more valuable conversations. Um, yeah. So let's go to our next point, which is how can you add value to other people's lives? Now we think that, for example, the only way I can add value to other person's life is, for example, by doing something for them. And because I'm still a newbie, how can I be doing something for them? I don't even have the experience. I don't have any expertise to share. That doesn't matter, right? That's again a misconception. You do not need any expertise in order to help someone. You can do it through your perspective because your perspective is always unique, right? It's up to that person how they take your perspective, but you should always present it in a kind manner and a non-offensive manner, obviously. But your perspective is always valuable, and it depends on the person if they take that into consideration. For example, I always look forward to people giving me their perspective on a problem, on a solution, on a possible way I did a thing, but it could have been done another way as well, right? So you have to be open-minded when you're receiving perspectives, and you have to be giving perspectives as well, right? Secondly, your experiences. Every single one of us has a different story about their first job. Maybe it was an internship for some of you. Maybe it was a tuition, for example, for some of you, right? For example, my first job was teaching a kid in my neighborhood, right? So what's commonly ये होता है कि we all start off by our earning journey or our professional journey by teaching kids, right? So that's your experience and how you got to that point where you decided कि अच्छा मुझे अब पैसे कमाने हैं या मुझे काम करना है and all of that, right? So that counts as your experience as well. And the reason why it's valuable to other people's lives is because, for example, there's a company out there who's looking to make it easier for students to get tutors, right? So if they hear your story, they might feel like, okay, so this is how the current process goes, right? Or for example, this is the problems in the process, or this is the way people do things. So here's how we can improve them. Again, your experience is either going to resonate with other people's, right? Maybe your friends or more people who also want to start working are going to see it as an inspiration and they're going to shoot their shot as well. Or maybe it's going to, for people who are in different fields, they might look at it from a different perspective. And if they're nice enough, they might drop you a comment on it as well and share, like, aapke knowledge mein bhi izafa hoga usse. And then lastly, your support. You can add value to people's life just purely by being their cheerleader, right? So there's a ton of famous people in our time, right? There's a ton of influencers, and giving support to the right person means you're making the right person famous, right? So आज अगर आप किसी छोटे पेज को support दे रहे हैं तो हो सकता है eventually that page might grow, right? So it's very important that you support pages, the people who align with your values, so that you see more of that in the future, right? You see that growing in the society. Now that completely depends on you, कि आपकी values क्या है and what you see on growing. But whatever it is, showing your support publicly matters a lot. Okay, can we go to the next slide, Timu? Okay, so on LinkedIn, you have this option of creating your network, right? It comes under the main dashboard, My Network के नाम से. And what you can do is you can send connections to anyone you want who has the option on their profile. But if you have a new profile, I wouldn't suggest sending too many connections at once, because it's we live in an age of AI and bots. So LinkedIn पे बहुत सारे ऐसे checks लगे हुए that filters out bots, right? And if you're sending too many connections together, it red flags as a blog doing a bot, sorry, a bot doing this. So you wouldn't want to send too many together. Maybe try to keep it to something like 10 or 15 per day, right? So who can you connect with? You can connect obviously with anyone you want on the internet, but ideally I would say start with your friends, your college peers, your colleagues. If you've worked either in a previous company or you're working in a current company, just try and connecting with them, send them a request, and generally people you look up to. So the famous profiles on LinkedIn, you can connect with them, but most probably end up only following them, because a connection is only built when they accept your request as well, right? So if, for example, you just follow them, it means that you see their content, but they don't see your content, right? So always try to get a connection if you want to make sure that you're posting regularly and you want the person to see your content, then try to go for a connection. If you just want to follow them for their content, then you don't need to send a connection. Just a follow would be fine. Next slide. Okay, so once you've built your network, now your network is going to be seeing a lot of things about you, right? They're going to be seeing all the stuff you put on here, right? And this is now again up to you कि आप क्या-क्या चीजें post कर रहे हैं. But keeping in mind कि this is the content that you're posting is what basically is building your network, or is the you could say it's the image that's creating in your network's mind about you, right? Oh, this person cares about these things, or this person has knowledge about these things, or an interest even. Again, you don't need to have a deep knowledge of everything, just an interest is nice enough, right? So for example, if you're sharing your achievements, it shows your network what kind of things you consider an achievement, right? Winning a contest, or getting your first job, or helping someone out, whatever it is, right? Anything that you're proud of. Giving feedbacks to people. You can write, for example, posts about giving feedback on a recent event. For example, +92 Disrupt is coming up and you've decided to go and attend it. So you can write your feedback about the event कि ये चीजें मुझे अच्छी लगी, ये चीजें बेहतर हो सकती थी, blah blah blah. Again, इसी तरह से feedbacks can also go in the comment sections. For example, if you're reading through articles on LinkedIn and you want to share a summary of what you've learned, right? Something we do here at Skill Hive is ask you guys to share summaries of what you've learned. So you can apply that over there as well. And that would basically be a feedback. So for example, you read an article, you go like, okay, in the comment section, you can just appreciate the author and give them some feedback. These are things I learned, and these are things, for example, you can improve on, right? इसके अलावा appreciations. So again, these can go both as comments. These can go under posts or articles or videos, even LinkedIn has videos now. You can give suggestions, let's say you have a suggestion, Crumble ki aajkal marketing बहुत trending hai, right? So you have a suggestion on how they can cash that in further. So write a post about it, tag the founders of Crumble, tag the page, tag anyone else who you think would be interested in the idea, right? Maybe some marketing agency or some marketing personnel that you're following. And you never know, your unique ideas might catch the right person's attention, and they might reach out to you because they like your idea, right? And these things, for example, it doesn't take much time, right? Aksar hum log scrolling through social media, we get a random idea when we're discussing with our friends. We do get random ideas, and they sound kind of funny at that time or ridiculous. But if you refine it just a little bit, it actually might be a good idea. That's how a lot of ideas of successful things also come up, right? So don't ever undermine your ideas, right? Always write them down. I have a rough note. And I make sure I write all my ideas down there. And I do delete a lot of them later because they are genuinely dumb, but some of them also turn out to be good. So putting them up properly on LinkedIn is also always a great idea. Okay, next point is observations, right? Deep reflections about, okay, the point is missing over here, but write deep reflections about anything you have observed recently, right? So it could be, for example, a recent trend that you see, memes wala trend ho sakta hai, and your observation on that. For example, when LinkedIn started adding videos to their algorithm and everything and promoting them, a lot of people had a lot of say on it. Ke karna chahiye, nahi karna chahiye. Like, videos are for Instagram and TikTok. Why are they bringing it on here? Some people said that it's good because now we consume more content in videos. So that means that the content will be more likely to be consumed if it's a video versus a post on LinkedIn. So there were a lot of observations, a lot of perspectives. You can share that as well. Again, it doesn't have to be specified कि सिर्फ LinkedIn के बारे में हो. It could be literally about anything. But again, if you want your post to be getting engagement and finding the right people, because we don't want to just put up random posts and bas khatam kahani, right? We want these posts to be building our network. So tagging the right people is important. Putting the right hashtags is important. A quick Google search or asking GPT will tell you कि कौन से इस topic पे relevant Hive personals हो सकते हैं और कौन से hashtags हो सकते हैं, right? इसके अलावा document your journey. Yep. So this one is personally my favorite. That's the type of content I genuinely enjoy on LinkedIn is when people share about their journey in a meaningful way, right? मैं उसकी बात नहीं कर रही कि I just started a job at XYZ and I'm so excited for the future ahead, blah blah blah. I'm not talking about just those two-liner updates about what you're doing. I'm talking about deep, really good content and like what you're feeling while you're, let's say, applying to a new job or you get a new job, what you're looking forward to and all of those things, right? So the more details and the more personal you make it, the more the people, your network who's going to be reading through your content is actually going to understand you, resonate with you. And again, in the long run, it's going to help you find the perfect people for you to work with, right? Whether it's in your own company, if that's what you're planning, or if it's in someone else's company, right? Next slide. Okay, so this is just a list of like ये जो हमने content के points पिछली slide में cover करे थे वो आप डाल कहाँ सकते हैं comments में डाल सकते हैं. You can put it up as a post. You can design it as a carousel post on Canva and then put it up. LinkedIn also has groups just like Facebook does, and you can join those groups and you can interact freely with anyone. All right. Over there, you can now also even post reels. So if you're, for example, a content creator on any other platform, then you can also experiment putting up the same reels on LinkedIn and see if the crowd likes it, right? You can also write articles, right? And there's this exclusive thing that LinkedIn does. It's called Top Voices. LinkedIn ka platform खुद ही selects who is a top voice, and they send you a question in your inbox. And if you answer it, so this happens over frequency, and I think almost every day. You get one question every day if you're selected. And if you answer this, then you get a top voice badge on your profile, which is like LinkedIn recognizing that you're an expert in XYZ field, right? Next slide. Okay, visuals and storytelling, right? So again, this is a more detailed breakdown of the content that you're putting up. It's important that you're adding meaning to other people's life, like we've covered in the previous slides, and not just random information. If I just put up a post right now after this webinar, that I just conducted a webinar on LinkedIn networking and I guided so many students, then that doesn't add any value to any person's life who's reading it, right? Instead, if I share that while preparing the slides, I had these thoughts and why I did it, for example, why I'm conducting the webinar in the first place, or let's say you guys interact more actively in the comments and ask me questions. So I would be like, okay, so this was a successful webinar because people were actually understanding the content and they were interacting and asking questions. So whatever content you're posting, make sure that it has a proper purpose, a personal touch to it, because right now people are just posting using AIs, right? They're just creating ChatGPT content, and if you want your content to stand out, then it's going to be the humane element that you put into it that defines actually makes me feel like, okay, I'm talking to this person and not just a bot. Okay, next slide. Okay, so once you guys, for example, have your network set up, you've started posting content, and you've started getting engagement on it, for example, you'd want to build the conversations further, right? Because एक post पे या एक reel पे एक limited interaction ही हो सकती है. So if you have a LinkedIn free account, what you can do is you can chat freely with your existing connections. But if you want to chat or inbox a person you're not connected with, you'd first have to send them a connection request and then chat with them. So you cannot chat with them unless they're added as a connection, even if you follow them. What you can do, however, is add a message to your connection request. So let's say you want to send a message to someone for the first time. So when you click on connect, there's an option to just send the connection or add a note, right? So add a note over there and the person will see it in their, not in their inbox, but in their My Network tab when they see your request. उसके साथ साथ नीचे ही आपकी note लिखी हुई होगी. Next slide. Okay. So that brings us almost towards the end of our webinar, right? We've covered about things about the importance of networking, how to do it, what benefits it will get you. And these are just a few stats to convince you further. Okay, you should be one of the few people who are networking on LinkedIn, right? Again, networking is not just limited to LinkedIn. It's you can be networking in physical spaces as well, or you can be networking on other platforms as well, right? But the idea is to make meaningful, impactful conversations. That's the key to networking. And if you guys are still, doubtful about how helpful LinkedIn can be, so these are a few stats to help you understand that. So for example, LinkedIn has helped almost 4 million people get jobs through its Jobs for You feature. So LinkedIn has this way of filtering jobs and showing you the ones that apply to you. It does this based on your experiences, job अपनी profile में add करते हो, and it also does this based on the recent job searches you've made. So for example, if I search for content writer jobs in Pakistan, so it's going to save it into its algorithm and then it's going to show it in the Jobs for You section. So you see similar jobs than the ones you searched the last time. So anytime you feel like अच्छा मुझे जो Jobs for You ये दिखा रहा है are not relevant, just go and search the ones you want and the next day it's going to be according to that. Okay. Next point is 70% of candidates achieve their next role through their network, and this has been true for decades. So now this, again, is not limited to just LinkedIn networks. It's your general networks, right? We've heard very commonly that if you have a source, then you're more likely to get a job in that company, right? So जो source है, just replace that with networking, right? ज़रूरी नहीं है कि you know the person personally. You have social platforms, so even if you haven't met the person in person, physically in the same space, you can meet them virtually, right? So let's say you want to get into XYZ company and you've made it your goal to get into that company. So you start interacting on the employees or even the founders. You can aim high, right? With their content on LinkedIn. Again, this is not limited to LinkedIn. If they're more active on some other profile, let's say they're more active on Instagram or they're more active on Discord or YouTube, whatever. But again, you would have to be on that platform to know that they're more active there. So you just interact with them and that gets you kind of like they notice you, right? Because of the valuable conversations that you're creating, right? A lot of people, again, a lot nahi balki majority, 70% is a big number, just get their achievements, sorry, their next roles from this networking that they do. So knowing people is not enough. They shouldn't just know your name, but they should actually know a few things about you, and that's only possible if you're actually having meaningful conversations with them. The next point is 7 people are getting hired every minute through LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has a ton of jobs open, and almost every recruiter is now hiring through LinkedIn, right? There are a lot more job searching platforms like LinkedIn. We have Indeed, we have Glassdoor, we have a local startup by the name of Rosie.pk. वो लोग भी सिर्फ पाकिस्तान में ही काम कर रहे हैं. So again, there's a lot of these, but LinkedIn stands out as the first in the market, hence the best, because they're constantly improving their systems. And then again, like we discussed in our previous webinar, candidates with a comprehensive LinkedIn profile, which basically means if you're following all the steps that we laid out for you in the previous LinkedIn webinar that we had, that would make it a comprehensive profile. And if you have that profile, then it has a 71% higher chance of getting a job interview. So if you are, for example, applying to a job, then obviously there is always a next stage, which is either a test or an interview directly, right? So if you have a complete profile, then there's a 71% higher chance for you to get that interview. So the stakes are very high. And then again, there are over 35,000 skills listed on LinkedIn. Now, why I found this important to add this stat over here was to give you guys the understanding that um, if you don't have one skill, it shouldn't stop you from applying to a job, right? 35,000 skills का मतलब ये है कि everything is a skill. If you try hard enough, for example, time management is a skill. Agar aaj you're good enough at time management and having the proper schedule and making sure that you do your own things on time, that in itself is a skill. Communication is a skill. If you're able to explain your point really well to another person, then that in itself is a skill. So no habit of yours that you think is a good thing about you is small enough, and no habit of yours is insignificant enough to not be applied to your professional life. So all of these jitni bhi choti skills that you need to know about yourself, right? So take out some time, write down all the things that you're good at, right? And then try to see, you can find the skills list of LinkedIn very easily online, right? So just see which of these are more formally matched using the right terminology, right, on LinkedIn, and add those to your profile. And the last point is profiles on LinkedIn that have complete information receive 30 more weekly views. Now, if you're there for views and if you want more engagement on your profile, then again, obviously having complete information would be a key element, right? And that brings us to the end of our webinar. If you guys have any questions, you may drop them in the comment section now. I'd also like each of you to share a quick summary in the chat, so we understand that how many of you were able to understand the questions, understand the content. So Iman shared the conclusions very nicely in the comment section. What I would like to add a small thing after I realized after reading her comment was that she wrote, for example, improve yourself according to comments, right? So while it's important that you take the feedback that people give you and improve on that, it's also it's a matter of I would say mindset, right? If you constantly worry about what people are going to think, then you won't be able to put up content, right? Whether it's a simple comment, even you're going to think it over like 10 times, 100 times. So while it's important for you to take others' feedback, you also shouldn't be afraid of people judging you, right? So don't think that, okay, if I'm getting comments on it or if I'm getting feedback on it, and you start getting nervous the next time you post, right? Don't let that hold you back. And again, not it's not necessary that everyone's feedback is applicable to you. Sometimes people give you genuine feedback or criticism that you feel like doesn't apply to you. You don't have to take it too hard, and you can simply, अगर आपको नहीं समझ आ रही सामने वाले की बात, आप उसको सीधा सीधा ignore कर सकते हो, right? It's not necessary for you to apply every single comment that you get. But I wouldn't recommend that ever, because you don't know that person enough to take their advice that seriously. Okay, thank you everyone for joining so much. That brings us to the end of our session, and we'll be seeing you in the next episode. Allah Hafiz.